Here is the Klarhet Shift podcast, brought to you by Klarhet Compass. From strategy to transformation, we help leaders deliver results. A lot of rebrands focus on the surface, like new logos or taglines, without digging into the cultural or operational changes that really drive transformation. And when business is also navigating a strategic pivot or a shift to a new market, that disconnect can create even more friction. If the internal team isn't aligned or the company's history still looms large, it's easy for the repositioning to miss the mark or fall flat with employees and customers alike. That's why I wanted to talk to Mike Stolz, because navigating a strategic pivot while staying true to your core values and vision isn't easy. He's had to keep revenue flowing from the legacy business while building momentum in a new, more lucrative market. And that kind of alignment takes real intention. All right. Thank you, Mike, for joining us. I really appreciate having you today.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about how we use core values in times of change and how to keep the company focused and united, all going in the same direction. But before we get started, can you just sort of set the stage when you became CEO at your most recent company? There were some headwinds that the company was facing. Can you kind of give us the lay of the land as it was?
Sure. It was an interesting time. As I entered the company, we had an owner that had done an amazing job building up the business, had done an amazing job building up very strong partnerships with both our customers and with the employees. But as we went through that typical kind of growth ceiling and, we reached a plateau where the business needed to evolve in order to continue to grow and to reach the expectations that the owner had set for the business and where he was at. At the same time, he was looking at the opportunity to retire within the next 5 years or so. And so we wanted to position the company for that and ensure that there was a successful exit and that all of the loyal employees that we had opportunities to grow as the company grew. So those were kind of the backdrop to that, those technology evolutions, things like that affected the business. But really, at the core of it, as we started to look at that need for change, one of the things that became very clear is that the employees, and we like to call them teammates or part of our team, really we're getting confused. Where are we headed? What are we doing? Is there uncertainty? What do I need to focus on? And so that really led to this big focus on core values that we took on.
So how did you use the core values?
We had the opportunity to leverage some experience that I had. I was on a board for an organization called SCORE that had brought in a number of initiatives around value systems and so forth. And we attended the national meeting of their volunteer base and their regional leads, and had a phenomenal speaker that it really kind of lit a light bulb for me. We had this need in the business. We had employees looking for more clarity on vision and mission and where are they at. And the gentleman that was speaking, Sam Silverstone, was really quite passionate about the need to share those core values and to build those core values. And so I went on a journey with the team, and we looked at different opportunities to build the value system and to really drive from the employee base, as opposed to many organizations that I've been in. Core values are always part of the corporate messaging and so forth. But oftentimes they're generated by the leadership team or by, a certain organization within the company. And, we felt it was really important for our team to to define these core values because they're the ones that are going to have to live by it. So we created a bunch of sessions that went over the concepts of the core value building process that we were going to use. We went through some examples on what core values look like. We looked at other companies and other organizations. And then we asked every teammate to generate 3 values that they would want the company to have and to demonstrate. And we did that over a period of a couple of months. And we met with small groups and did the yellow sticky brainstorming process. We collated those as a group that did not include any leadership. And that group, that committee that we created, collated all of the input and drove to the top value systems that everyone was quite passionate about. And then we took those back to the employees. We talked about these key concepts of the values, and then we wrote them. Almost like our Bill of Rights. We wrote them down again. It was an employee-led and employee-only committee that did this. And they created our core values, and then they defined those core values. And we put those all together. We celebrated the documentation of those. We actually put them on a wall. And so everyone can see them as they go about their day on a regular basis. And then on a yearly basis, we sign our commitment back to those values. And so it's part of the culture that is underpinning, everything that we do as an organization. It's part of the culture that helps us define who's going to fit in from an employee recruitment standpoint. What types of customers are going to work well with us based on those value systems, and how do we treat each other? How do we make decisions? How do we hold each other accountable? All of the attributes of the value system then go out and have components into our behaviors and into our market pursuit of customers and the relationships we build with those.
Awesome. Was there were there any moments of resistance and with where the core values kind of helped say, hey, it helped you break through the resistance on any kind of because you were looking to change markets at the same time, right?
We were, it's an interesting question, Marion, because we had resistance in certain areas, and I'll talk about that. But by and large, we had a lot of acceptance. And I think once people understood, for me, there was an aha moment personally when I started to think about these core values, and I looked back in my career, and I had made a decision to leave a company after only being there a short period of time, and I couldn't articulate why. And it was that the cultural fit wasn't there. The company was operating in an area that was not comfortable for me, not in a way that I do business, right? They very different kind of way of doing business, but I could never articulate why I left. I just knew that this was not a good fit. And as I went through this exercise, and I think many of the teammates that went through this exercise, it brought to light, and you were able to articulate what we would say is in our gut in the past, right? Or at least what I would say was in my gut, able to articulate, no, that's something that I believe strongly in. So as we went through this process over, a period of about 9 months thereabouts from kind of start to finish, it created some uncomfortableness for certain teammates that didn't necessarily want to align to those value systems. And so, the notion of accountability or the notion of stand for honor or, being passionate for our customers, that took some refinement for people to understand how do you use it, right? Accountability doesn't mean that I'm always worried about what you're doing, because I can't worry about what you're doing until I worry about what I'm doing, right? I have to hold myself accountable first. And so that was a journey for a lot of us, right?
Mhm.
Um, to be able to do that. It did impact our customer selection. There'll be certain customers that when we would go to operate with these customers, it was pretty clear that their way of going to market or their values weren't in alignment. That doesn't mean they were wrong. They just weren't in alignment with our values. And so, um, as we looked back on some of the relationships that maybe were more difficult, or the relationships that we had to work harder on, it became clear that these relationships were ones that we needed to treat differently and operate differently so that we could get that alignment of the value system.
Gotcha. So, how did the core values help and assist in making a market pivot the way you did? And if you could set the
Sorry,
stage on that too, please.
say that again. How did the core values?
So, your pivot from one type of business to another type of business, you want to set the stage for that and then talk about how core values helped.
Sure. And, as we added, we basically went after new market opportunities that were complementary of the markets we were in today. So we went for that kind of adjacency component of it. And as we did that, it creates confusion. Anytime you're doing this, right? It creates confusion for our customers. It creates confusion for our employees. It creates confusion for our way of business. And so those core values allowed us to keep that alignment of, okay, but at the core, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. And this is why it's important. And communication was key to that, and bringing people back to what is our vision, what is our mission, and what are our core values on a regular basis helped to ease that confusion as we moved forward. Um, and I think that the selection of the types of customers, it became clear that one of our core values is our passion for excellence. Well, if we're going to have a passion for excellence, then we need to make sure that the customers that we are looking to partner with also have that as a high priority, because that means that the way of doing business is maybe a little bit more detailed. Maybe maybe a little bit more costly, um, because if you're trying to achieve, this excellence side of things, then you're going to structure your business in a slightly different way. We then started an exercise where we would actually talk to our customers about our core values as part of the onboarding of any new customer. We had what we called a core value alignment discussion. And we said, here are our core values. What are your core values? How do those align? How are we going to work together? Because in any business, we're going to reach difficult times, right? And so those core values are how you navigate those difficult times, most likely. And so if you have that kind of discussion ahead of time to say, we're going to make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes, we're going to work together, and this is how we generally work. Is that going to fit with how you generally work, or are those expectations different? So
Mm-hmm.
it really impacted every portion of our business.
So you talked at the beginning and said, it's all on the wall and people sign the wall. And the sign the wall is a critical differentiator because people are owning it. What other ways were was it, well, you've talked a little bit, it's beyond surface level. It's not just on the wall. People are living and breathing it every day. Is it part of the regular conversation?
That's a great question. The team got together, and I thought it was a brilliant idea that they came up with. We aligned all of our recognitions with the core values, and so that was early on. So the recognition system for employee recognition and awards and so forth all aligned with those core values. And so now, as I recognize you for a job well done, I'm going to bring some of the language from the core values in and say, Marianne did this wonderful job doing this, and this is where it aligned with our core values. You stood for honor, or whatever that might be. Um, and then, maybe 2 or 3 years later, we also brought it into our appraisal system. And so as you were going through our appraisal process, as anyone in the company was going through the appraisal process, we would align to those core values. And at one point, we used the core values throughout. At another point, we used just one of the overall categories was just the core values overall.
Mhm.
It's so people would see it as part of recognition. They'd see it as part of their appraisal. Any company meeting we ever had, whether that be internal or we had it with customers or whatever, we always started with our core values. Um, and so, it wouldn't be enough. And I love the question because it wouldn't be enough just to write them, put them on the wall and sign them every year. It really had to be something that we built as part of our business and put into our daily operation. And so the team came up with some great avenues to do that. We have some fun with it, and celebrating with it. But in the end, it becomes ingrained in the folks. And it also it's an interesting filter because if I don't align with those core values in this organization, then it's probably not a good fit for me.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to be happy, right? And the other thing is that the teammates that are around me aren't going to be happy because I don't quite fit in. And so it created an opportunity for us to get a lot of folks that on the team already had such a great value system. But then as we grew and added folks to ensure that we had like-minded and from a value system standpoint, like-minded folks. Everyone wants to bring in new concepts and new ideas and so forth. But having that value system, that foundation be similar, not exact, but similar is important.
Right. Um, were the core values it sounds like the core values were demonstrable every day in the organization. Were any of them aspirational as opposed to, no, this is just the way we do business?
Yeah, aspirational and also, let's say, strategic in a way. So aspirational from the standpoint that we didn't have all of the basis of each of these core values in place today, right? So we had to build as we moved on through the progression of this, we had to build those capabilities and those competencies into the organization. Might be the way our value system aligned with quality, or maybe the one that comes to mind as you ask that question is we have a core value that was around innovation and the pursuit of
Mhm.
innovation and how do we constantly innovate? What do we do? Well, that took some real focus, right? Because you can innovate. Sure, everybody, defaults to technology, but that's not the only way you innovate, right? And so how do we innovate our way of doing business? How do we innovate systems that we have that maybe are too cumbersome or not efficient or whatever? How do we innovate just in the way we're thinking or the markets we pursue? How do we learn more? So this pursuit of innovation and bringing about new ways of thinking is a journey. It's an ongoing journey. So I
Mhm.
don't think we would ever be able to say that our core value alignment around innovation is a check mark, right? Because it's not. It's a progression, it is. I like the framing of that, right? This is aspirational and where we want to get there. We'll never get to that final goal of achieving innovation, but we wanted to, the word that we used was empowering innovation. I didn't use I shouldn't say that. The team that built it, the employees used the words empowering innovation. So ensuring that people could go out and have that ability to kind of question what we're doing and how do we change it and what do we do differently.
Mhm. Okay. So, how let's talk about your strategic intent meeting the cultural reality, so to speak. How did you align internal operations and culture with the story that you were telling the market? So, yeah, go ahead
But
if you've got an answer.
no, please.
But um, just you're working with customers. You talked about starting with the core values when you talked with customers. But were there any? There's sometimes gaps. How did you resolve those types of when that happened? When there are gaps,
Gaps in the core values or
core
gaps in the
where things you've got operations, you've got your values, and there's a little bit of friction between the
yes.
two. Did core
Yeah,
values always win out, or you know, operational
No,
realities being what they are.
operational realities, if I go back to that innovation one, you could look at something, a way we're doing some a process or whatever, and just look at it and just shake your head and say, this is not innovative. This is not the right way to do it. But in order to meet the needs of the business today, we need to do that. But back to being aspirational, but what's our plan then to get this to be more innovative or to be more efficient or so forth? How do we bring the team along in this journey to ensure that we understand the markets that we're in detail? Right, we're not going to know them originally, and so that creates fear, and we're not going to know them in detail. Sorry, and so that creates fear, and so now that's a need for education and ensuring that our team gets the opportunities to learn. One of the things that our HR team did that I think was just fantastic was, we created these individual development plans. So those individual development plans would align with that strategy around markets, and they would align with those core values. It's so each person in the team had the opportunity to kind of say, you know what, I'm lacking in this area, or I'm really good in this area, but I want to be better, or you know what, I don't know if I want to be in this line of the operation right now. I'd really like to be over in this other area. How do I get there? And so, if we combine those kind of elements of communication, employee development, of the core values and aligning those core values, and most importantly, how does that all align into our strategy? Because you can't just go off and I believe you can't just go off and embark upon a strategy without making sure that you have alignment within your team, that you have awareness of where the opportunities are, where the gaps are, and that you have a plan to fill those gaps, right? So that whether it be the individual development plans or the systems approach that you're using or the process development that you're going to need in order to do that, and then how do you obtain that? Do you go out and uh, you know consult? Do you use consultants? Do you go out and bring that in house? What are the different ways of doing it? But you have to identify where those gaps are, and it can't just be leadership that's identifying those, right? It has to be everybody on the team. And as we go through that strategy shift, your original customers and those original markets are going to need to be reassured that you're not de-investing in this area. And we didn't, right? And so I think that was just really a focus of communication. And how come I can't talk to Marianne every day now? Now I used to talk to her all the time. Well, Marianne has decided that she wants to, pursue this other area, or wants to learn this new technology or
Mhm.
process or skill set. And so we're giving her the opportunity to do some things differently. Aren't you happy for Marianne? And so just take that communication for folks to get that reassurance.
Gotcha. When when making the market pivot to to pursue both together, there's a lot of change and a lot of complexity, as you mentioned. Was the pace of things ever too much too soon? And how did or how did you lead appropriately paced change, and how did the values and mission and vision help in that?
Well, I like to downhill ski, and I can tell you a few examples of where the skis got further down the hill than I did. I caught up, but it wasn't very pretty when I did catch up. So yes, we got over to finish that analogy. We got over our skis a bit, and I think that that's where you fall back on those core values, right? So, we may have misread the complexity of something that we needed to go into, or we may have been pulled into an area that we didn't necessarily want to get into as quickly as we did. It's so, really as a team, make sure we understood where did we see those gaps. Be comfortable saying, I made a mistake. We're going to make mistakes. All of us are. And, as we shifted the organization to be, more aligned into those core values, people we're okay with making mistakes. I'm okay with making mistakes, and I'm okay with the team making mistakes as long as we learn from those mistakes and that we're transparent about those, right? So it goes back to this, stand for honor kind of concept, which is, hey, sorry about this. We made a mistake. This is what we did wrong. This is what we're doing to correct it. Um, we're going to continue to work hard to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But mistakes will happen because if we're so worried about missteps or whatever, then we'll never move forward. We'll never take that next step to transitioning the business, to growing the business, to expanding where we're at, because we're only going to be comfortable in the area we're in right now, in our comfort zone. And so anytime you step out of your comfort zone, you're going to have the opportunity for mistakes. And I think it's those core values, that clarity and transparency that you have, making sure that those that are impacted understand that right away, I made a mistake and here's what I'm doing about it.
Any other questions that you think I should be asking?
I think we covered a lot of it, and I
Mm,
really, really appreciate this. I think
yeah,
it's always fun to talk about these. I have a lot of passion around core
it
values, and
it comes through.
yeah, and it's been as I kind of get toward the end of my career here. It's been the highlight, really, in that this system and leveraging this and the impact it had on individuals, the impact it had on the business, the impact it had on our customers. It's quite rewarding and refreshing. We've all worked in organizations that didn't necessarily fit well for us, or were just a
Mhm,
little uncomfortable or whatever. And I'm sure there are people in organizations that I've been in, leading, that aren't comfortable with my style, but um, it's okay to say I'm not comfortable with that, right? It's okay to kind of say that this is maybe not the fit for me, maybe
mhm,
in the role I'm in or whatever. But it takes that communication. It takes that basis of core values and vision and mission and that strategy. But I think you can't do any of that if you don't reinforce it and make it part of your daily operation.
yeah. It's interesting 'cause if you've got the core values clearly defined and demonstrably it demonstrated every day, people will understand if there's not a fit. They'll almost self-select out.
They do self-select, right?
Yeah. Um, okay, so CEO out there looking to make a market pivot or coming into a company that seems to have a little bit of friction. In terms of core values, what's the one thing that they should think about or start doing, or what's the one bit of advice that you would give them?
I would say that, what I learned from this process, and it's, we've lived it for about 10 years now. What I've learned most about this process is that by putting the ownership in the team, by having it not be top down, but actually, obviously you're going to influence it, and you're going to create a culture in which people are going to want to strive for this. But I think the idea that having the team develop those core values, cross section of the organization, it wasn't every employee writing those; they had their input, because in the end, if someone said, "Well, I don't agree with that," well, these are your words. We actually took the yellow stickies that everybody wrote, and we took a picture of those, and we have them right next to the core values. Because
Mhm.
then you can go back and say, "Oh, that's right. I wrote that. That these words are here." I like to say that 95% of the words that are in the actual written core values came out of those yellow stickies. Now I know I did my part. So now I have to live by them, right? I have to be accountable. I have to hold myself accountable to those core values. And so uh, being able to point back to that process, right? That we as the organization wrote these. It's not something that we found in some book, or that we drafted in a leadership meeting. These are the words and the desires and the beliefs of everyone around you. Even as employees change, people retire, people come and go from an organization, those core values are permeating through the organization, because as new people come on, they're coming into the organization. To your earlier comment, they're coming into the organization, and if it's not a fit, they're going to self-select.
Great. Well,
Awesome.
thank you very much for joining the Klarhet Shift, name of the podcast, and appreciate having you. Um, this is typically where I would ask, okay, where can people find you, or do you not want to be found? So they would either
Um,
say a website or a LinkedIn profile or
LinkedIn,
something like
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll ask it again. So if people want to find you, Mike, where can they reach out?
Happy to engage with anybody. LinkedIn is probably the easiest. So
All
look,
right.
look me up on LinkedIn.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When you're ready to move from charting the course to making the journey, Klarhet Compass is here to guide the way. Whether it's delivering complex programs, leading transformation, or equipping leaders through workshops, we help organizations align, collaborate, and deliver. Learn more at k-compass.com.